Hi students, I wanted to continue with the Trinket Candy project. We already did the uh, gesture drawing, which takes the longest, and we refrain from using too much of the grid. We just did a very broad grid just to get it where it goes generally, especially the dot in the middle. I gave you that spot to go by. Next, we did the tracing of the lines from that drawing, just as many as we could see, and starting to get used to the lost and found line rather than just heavy mechanical line. The reason we traced this is so that we have this template, and the template is going to be what we use from now on. This is just going to be a reference for the next stages, and this is going to be a reference for the next stages. This part's pretty straightforward. It's just the next level. It's the yellow carbon level that we talked about before for all the projects where you use that. So I'll review here what you want to do, and same thing, it's a lot better when you're on a square table. But what I like to do is to take tape. See if I can do this with the blue tape. If it's not sticky enough, you can switch. But you want to tape down a couple spots on here, but you want to be able to slide something underneath it. That way you're set. This is also going to be on top of a piece of yellow carbon, which is going to be on top of the splatter that you did that should have dried overnight. I made one that was yellow, green, and red, violet. And make sure you are happy with your design before you get going. You want to really see this variation. I added some different saturation to make it more balanced. And you can, of course, put it in any direction, whatever feels like it's going to work. You can even anticipate where these things might fall. So it's really important to just kind of slow down and go, okay, if I use this, this area is going to be here, this dark will be here. The dark splatters are the ones that are the most important to consider. I think I'm going to go this way. All right, so underneath this, you're going to slide this, and you want to make sure that your taped together tracing paper has been defined in terms of the border. If this is crinkled a little bit, that's okay. We're just getting it where it is placed. Line it up, and then we're going to be real careful about taping down that layer too. Since it's underneath, I have to go like this. The more tape, the better. The more you can reach under tape, tape, tape. If you use blue tape, it won't tear. We went over that before. If you use masking tape, just put it on your clothes first so it's not too sticky, because you don't want to tear after all this work. So the bottom layer is taped. I'm still not doing the top, except for the top so it doesn't blow away. But underneath here, we're going to tape your yellow carbon. Since it's too small for the surface, we're going to need to trace it twice. Since you have so much yellow carbon, you can use two pieces and just secure them both and just do the whole thing. Or to save your carbon, you do one side and then slide it over. I don't mind sliding it. I'm kind of used to that because carbon paper is not usually the right size. But you just want to make sure you're covering one area of it. I'll just do the half. And that's when you want to really secure. You got to tape the carbon to the tracing, to the paper underneath. And all the tape is so important, but it's also why that carbon paper tears really easily. And sometimes you throw out the carbon just because it's so messed up on the edges, because people tend to just rip off the tape. If you're really careful, you don't have to throw out your carbon. I'm taping this part to this part. So you want to tape it to each other and on top, and all three, because that way it's not going to move when you do your tracing transfer. I'm just going to do this side because I don't have carbon on the other, but I have this tape here. Real sturdy, all these together. Can't tell you how important it is to just keep taping. And then just be careful when you take it off. So this way, now I have all this. The more time you take, always, with any project, the better it is, because then you get all that out of the way. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is grab a pen, and I'm going to grab a pen that's a different color than this, because, or a different value, because it's hard to see. So I'm going to grab a pen. Luckily, I happen to have a red one. You know, if you have a red or green paper mate. I don't need to go over this whole thing, it's obvious, but just be sure when you slide your carbon on this side, it's the same setup. And if you choose to use two pieces, just set it all up first and try not to overlap them too much in the middle. You may have to press harder on the areas we taped together, but on this one you're going to press hard in parts and then let it fade in others. So I'm doing a lot of pressure and then I'm fading out. A lot of pressure, fading out. Not fading too much because it is yellow, so it's hard to see. And we may have a moment after this, depending on what's called for in each individual painting, where we use different pencils to create the same lost and found. It doesn't always call for that. Sometimes paint is enough, sometimes a round brush with paint is enough. Other times you need to get a couple colored pencils or different pens or pointy markers. Usually markers not the case, but once in a while. It just depends on how the splatter works with the composition. It depends on a lot of things. How we end up handling that negative space, which is the other super important part of this project, a very thoughtful step-by-step. We do a lot of step back, look, make an adjustment, step back, look. You can't really do that part on the wall because it's gravity and paint, but there are opportunities here for several things. That's why I attached the video of the still life as well, because it shows your options. You got even wash, you got drip down, you got flare out, and you have all kinds of options for mood and saturation and brushes, and it's very important that you decide what's going to work best. And we still are only using the two complements even when we go to the next stage. Since you have a complement, you always have a warm and a cool and a dark and a light, so you don't even need to worry about black or values. So I won't keep talking, but this is the next stage. And since you're using a different color pen, you'll be able to see when you've done the whole thing. It's going to be very pale and light, just like I showed on any other time you transfer. It's only visible to the artist up close. It's difficult to show here on the camera. Even if I hold it up, you won't see all these lines so well. It might show up better only because on top of the dark splatter part, it'll show up as yellow. So it actually might be an interesting bit to integrate. Sometimes we integrate the carbon lines into the piece. So anyway, I'm going to fill this all out, and then when it's done, we'll get to the really important stage, which is shape by shape by shape decisions about what's going to come forward, what's going to go back, where we're going to do even wash, which brushes we're going to use. Are we going to be using a small brush for certain areas for even wash? Are we going to be using a big brush? Are we going to leave things white? You know, there's a lot of elements. Are we going to pick a certain brush to do flare out? Lots to do. But right now, go ahead and transfer all of your template, and then together we'll talk about the next steps.